I mean, it's
So
I think this is not talk about seriously. Is there a bridge? Okay. Okay.
it's the same thing.
I would love to.
Was that you?
Yeah.
Have you seen it?
Totally at your convenience. I just appreciate it. Yeah, that's what I was saying. I know you're going.
But they have the documents right there.
Yeah.
Can't remember who got it.
Yeah.
Y'all have, she didn't print it out there, but it should be for everybody on the right side. It should be two documents.
There you go.
Oh, I know. Probably, he's going to die. So I wouldn't necessarily worry about it. Haven't done that. So just to get approval, make sure he does we can change anything. I could change something out. I'll talk about it when I go back. I'm sure they can solution machine. I can swap out. So I will do that in minutes to make sure discussion.
I asked for more, like, they're like, sure. That allows me to have an entire department, my index. Exactly, totally self-sufficient. A lot, it's every different direction.
I'm not sure what all the slides are in. This looks really silly. Do you want me to, if I go first?
It looks silly until we win musical chairs, then it's gonna look awesome.
You guys turn over to you and talk about the sites.
Yeah, I don't know what. But I still haven't. Did she email them to us?
I think she emailed the Max.
That's Sam.
Here's a what?
Okay.
16. Everything but the emergency funding, honestly.
So I'll be.
The agenda of everything.
Okay. What did he, what's the one about it? You don't have it, don't worry about it. Just send it. I was just curious. I'm just curious. I haven't, I was waiting to follow up. This is second in time.
You need to rush up.
Well, we do have those things down there, so we.
I think, no, I just don't
Stuff like that.
She didn't want you. Because of the.
Thank you for your information, Tyler. Appreciate it. Correct, yes, we did close the app, and that's why we wanted to make sure that we had something that so we shot this thing like that way, I think it's still, it's critical, I was frustrated when I was like, these kind of stuff like that. So it was like, yeah, they can. No, they can't get out of sports bar. It's like 5 gallons of water. I think it would require a truck. And it's not ours, somebody steals them, that's on us. I mean, they're on site now. I was hoping
Hopefully hard to slide out.
We don't want to on the playground. Because that doesn't do what we need to. So, but everything's still blocked after tonight. Those 3 cars are blocked, so they can use them. But if they did climb in here, we would have to provide some sanitation. So we're okay with all of that. What's that? I didn't know what the state to offices across the state. And that's in place.
I was. No, that.
Okay.
All right, good evening. I'd like to call the March 17th, 2020 meeting of the Buncombe County Commission meeting to order. We're ready to start the introductory. We're still doing that. Are we still doing that? Okay, I know people have been busy. All right, we're just going to move ahead. If it happens, it starts rolling, we'll hush. But otherwise, let's just move on. I thank you all for being here this evening. Let's begin our meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. Please rise and join us in the pledge.
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
As we hold our commission meeting this evening, our community, our country, and nations across the world are facing a historic challenge. In the past week, formal health emergencies have been issued by the state of North Carolina, Buncombe County, and for our country. All public schools have been closed, and today all restaurants have been ordered closed as well, except for takeout services and deliveries. COVID-19 presents a health threat greater than any other that we have faced since the influenza pandemic of 1918, 100 years ago. As sobering as these realities are, I am heartened by the great work already being done and carried out by the dedicated professional staff here in Buncombe County, in our health department, emergency services, our public schools, and all of our other public staff who are rising to this moment and doing what needs to be done. Before we begin our meeting this evening, let's hold a moment of silence to recognize and offer a silent prayer for all the people in local government as well as throughout our community who are working hard to help Buncombe County get through this unique challenge. Please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. All right, we have a couple of announcements before we get started. Actually, first let me read the ethics reminder to the board. In accordance with the Code of Ethics adopted by the board, all county commissioners have a duty to obey all applicable laws regarding official actions, to uphold the integrity and independence of the office, to avoid impropriety in the exercise of official duties, to faithfully perform the duties of the office, and to conduct the affairs of the governing board in an open and public manner. Is there any item on the agenda, the outcome of which would have a direct, substantial, and readily identifiable financial impact for any board member? Does any board member have a financial interest in any public contract coming before this board today? There being none, all board members have a duty and obligation to vote on any matters voted on by the board at this meeting. Okay, we come to the agenda, and there's a couple of items that we need to add and a couple that need to be taken off. The staff have requested that we add 2 new business items to the agenda. First, designating deputy finance officers, and second, suspending certain policies during a local state of emergency. There's some materials that have been given to each of us about each of these 2 items. Is there any objection to adding these 2 items for consideration this evening? All right, by unanimous consent, those will be added. And then 2 items which we can remove from the agenda. First, we had consideration of an emergency declaration on the agenda from when we scheduled a meeting more than a week ago, but as things were unfolding, as chair, I made the decision to go ahead and issue the emergency declaration on Thursday. So there's no need for the emergency declaration. It's been in effect since then. So we can remove that item. And we also, in the spirit of not holding public forums that are likely to draw large crowds, we also decided to defer for now discussion about the hotel occupancy policy, an issue of a lot of community interest, but we felt like we need to have that discussion, but now's not the right time to do it in this type of format. So could I have a motion to add the 2 new business items just mentioned and to remove the emergency declaration, occupancy and occupancy tax, but to otherwise approve the consent agenda and follow the remainder of the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All right, are there any questions about any items on the consent agenda? Are there any questions from any members of the public about any items on the consent agenda? All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you very much. All right, under presentations, our first item is, I'm sorry, did we need to remove another, or some of these other items planned and not go ahead and, which ones?
Presentation, we want to do that too.
Okay, we're not gonna do the sports commission presentation, okay, that's fine. We are doing an update on the COVID-19 work, so let's go ahead and start there, and I believe Dr. Mullendorf is here to get us started. Thank you so much for being with us, Dr. Mullendorf.
Thank you, Brad. So we just wanted to do a big picture overview of the work we've been doing related to COVID-19. Go ahead and take the next slide. So,
Is something not working?
oh, because it wasn't guiding us, no. There you go. So this is just a slide to give you a brief overview of the status in the country that shows that over 3,500 confirmed cases of COVID-19 in the U.S. As of this morning, 40 cases in North Carolina. And at this time, we know of one case of COVID-19 associated with a traveler, an out-of-state traveler, who visited Asheville late last week, March 10th through 13th. We have conducted our case investigation. We've notified all the close contacts, and those people have been issued their quarantine orders and their guidance for what to monitor for and how to reach out to the appropriate communicable disease staff or healthcare providers should they develop symptoms. And so again, if individuals have not been contacted by our staff, they are not considered a close contact and do not need to take any action beyond what we are telling the general public. In terms of testing, today was the first day that we offered community testing in Buncombe County, led by Buncombe County Health and Human Services. We had 2 test sites, and actually they're still going on as we speak. So we have our test site at Biltmore Church at 35 Clayton Road in Arden. And as of 5 p.m., they've conducted 28 tests. They've seen more people than that, but they're screening people, making sure they have symptoms or mainly symptoms of COVID-19 and meet the criteria for testing. And then the other site is at UNCA, and they've conducted 60 tests. And it sounds like things are going smoothly at those sites. As long as we have testing supplies, those sites will remain open until 6 p.m. today, and then we'll reopen tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. And in terms of the number of testing sites elsewhere in the county, I know that our communicable disease nurses have done 12 tests so far since this started, and I would say community providers have probably done over 80 tests. So there are lots of opportunities in our community, it looks like, for people to obtain testing if they meet criteria. So again, I encourage people, if they have a healthcare provider and they have symptoms, so fever and cough or difficulty breathing, they need to call their healthcare provider first. If they don't have a healthcare provider, then they can certainly come to one of our community testing sites or go to an urgent care. And then if they don't, again, if they have questions or concerns, they can call the state hotline or they can call our communicable disease staff. So we're getting a lot of calls, so I encourage people to be mindful and make sure that they're calling the appropriate location or reaching out to the appropriate location for additional information.
Good evening, Fletcher Tove, Public Health Emergency Preparedness Coordinator. I just want to step through a quick timeline of what's happened since Thursday when we declared a local state of emergency. So on Friday, we established our partial emergency operations center. On Saturday, Governor Cooper, via executive order, closed schools statewide for 2 weeks. On Sunday, we convened an emergency planning committee at our EOC to help assist Buncombe County and city school systems preparing for that closure. Monday, we fully activated our Emergency Operations Center, and today we continued operations, and as this afternoon, Governor Cooper issued another executive order restricting bars and restaurants from sit-down service, limiting them to only to dine, or take out to go or pick up service. We continue operations with our EOC. In the 2 days it's been fully activated, we've made a lot of ground, covered a lot of ground, making some really great progress. What we're looking at next is drafting supplemental orders for the governor's executive order locally to look at closing and restricting gyms, pools, spas, entertainment venues, and any other social setting where groups could potentially congregate within 6 feet for extended period of time and meet our close contact criteria. Any questions?
There have been media advisory events held at noon for the last couple of days, increasing from the previous schedule of the once a week events that have been held the last couple of weeks. Is it the staff's intent to continue the noon briefings? I think they've been very well received. I've gotten lots of positive feedback from members of the community about how substantive and informative they have been. So what is the plan for kind of community updates going forward?
Yes, sir. So we will continue to have those midday noon media availabilities. Starting Thursday, those will be virtual format. So we won't be no longer having those in this room, but they'll be virtual. We're increasing our capacity to push that out to media and the public in real time. But those will continue throughout this whole endeavor.
Okay, and there'll be opportunities for the public to also watch those events through Facebook Live or other social media forums and on the county website afterwards.
Yes, sir. So I know currently we've been doing Facebook Live. All these are posted retroactively to YouTube and the county and city social media accounts. Yes.
Great. Yes, sir.
I'd like to say something. In my time as a public safety official in this county, I've had the opportunity to work with the county staff, mainly the emergency management side and then the budget side. But the last 2 days, I've actually been sitting over there in the EOC helping train our staff in the incident management team. And I just want to say how appreciative I am of this staff of Buncombe County. You folks are great. And to put in the hours you're putting in to make sure that we're doing what is right and what's best for our citizens, I'm very proud to say I am a Buncombe County resident, knowing that we have that type of leadership and that type of commitment in a room that can come together for the betterment of the citizens. When you think of government, a lot of people think of elected officials. When I think of government, it's the men and women who live this every day. They go to work for this county and they are making decisions. And to hear today that we are ahead of the curve with some of our other counties as far as our unified command system and all that, it is great. Some of these folks, it was new as to how this works, but they sit there and they went to training. And I want to say thank you personally. I pray every night that something's going to happen to this and this is going to get away from our country. But I'm also going to pray every night for the people who serve our citizens, and I'm very proud of each and every one of you who's been sitting in that room. And I won't be there tomorrow, but I will be there Thursday and Friday right there with you again. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you.
Any other questions? At this time, we're going to be discussing a budget amendment to provide additional resources for county responses to COVID-19 later in the meetings. I'm sure we'll have some more discussion at that time about next steps. But thank you all for being here and for all your terrific work. Okay. We don't have any other presentations. So our next item is a public hearing, a resolution authorizing to refund overpayment of excise taxes to the city of Asheville. And Mike Crew will present this item.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. This should be fairly simple. The City of Asheville inadvertently paid $950 in excise tax when they closed and sold a piece of property off Hilliard Avenue near Klingman. And the closing attorney, just as a matter of course, deducted the excise tax from the city's half of the ledger. Cities and counties don't pay excise tax, so they would like that back, and the Board of Commissioners is authorized to refund an overpayment of excise tax following a hearing. And that's what we're here for this evening.
All right, fantastic. I'm going to open the public hearing at 5:22 p.m. Are there any members of the public who wish to comment during the public hearing? All right, I'm going to close the public hearing at 5:23 p.m. Is there a motion?
Move approval. Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you so much. Ms. Bender, are any other items under county manager report?
I do have one. On our pre-meeting schedule from earlier today that we canceled, I had a presentation on paid family leave that right now is very appropriate at this time. I'd like to ask Sharon Burke, our health and human resources, to come and just present that in abbreviated form for you to understand what we're looking at. Sure. If you want to give us guidance, we can start out earlier. We were actually planning to do this in July, but we will love you to consider this and give us an opportunity to do that.
Sure, thank you so much. Come on up.
Good evening, and thank you for your time. Can you hear me? All right, so let's see here. I want to start off, I want to make sure that everyone is at the same level when we talk about Family Medical Leave or the Family Medical Leave Act. So if you bear with me, I'm just going to do some recap first and then I'll take you forward. So when we look at Family Medical Leave, covered employees begin with those employers that have more than 50 employees. Those employees need to have been an employee for more than 1 year for the employer, and they need to have worked in the last 12 months at least 1,250 hours. If they've done all that, then what the Paid Family or the Family Medical Leave Act does is it provides job protection for those employees. It is unpaid right now for 12 full weeks, and they can take those 12 full weeks either in a continuous bank or it can be done intermittently throughout a rolling calendar or a fixed period. So what I'd like to introduce is what is paid family leave. Paid family leave is simply, it's compensation that would be provided to an employee while they are caring for a serious medical condition of a dependent, whether that be a husband, spouse, wife, or a birth of a child or an adoption. So this isn't unique to Buncombe County. This actually started a little over, almost a year ago or so. The state of North Carolina, the Office of Personnel, they actually in September opted to put in a parental leave program. And here's the information on that. And they're basically offering 8 weeks for the birth of a child and 4 weeks for bonding with a newborn, for an adoption, I should say. Then the federal government, back in December, they actually enacted, basically it's paid family leave for all events. And so that would be birth, adoption, as well as caring for a family member, as well as caring for oneself. North Carolina counties that participate in some sort of paid family leave, and you'll see that they're in different increments. Cities that participate in paid family leave. States, oh goodness, I just saw a typo. States that participate in paid family leave. And you'll see that even some states, like in New York, they offer a very nice package, however, it's only at half the rate. So what I'm proposing to you today is the ability for us to enhance our current policy in the ordinance that would allow us to offer 6 weeks for paid family leave. And that would include providing 100% of the employee's salary for those 6 weeks, either intermittently or in a continuous block. The employee must at least meet those qualifying events, meaning that they have to have been an employee for at least 12 months. That period of time cannot exceed in regards to paid family leave for more than 6 weeks. However, after 6 weeks, the employee can use their sick time or any other paid available time off that they have. And during the time that they're receiving paid family leave, they cannot augment their pay to get additional compensation by using their sick time or their vacation or anything else like that. So they would just be basically receiving their full compensation. It is important that I let you know that there is a potential long-term cost for this. Okay, so we are looking at offering 6 weeks, which would be $647,251, and that is projected. And what we did was we looked at 2019 figures. And so, assuming that every year is exactly like 2019, this could potentially be what our liability would be. However, I'd like you to consider, if we put this policy together and we used intermittent leave and continuous blocks, so we give the employee the flexibility of caring for their family member, however they need to care for that family member. We also allow that family member, in some of the other policies that we researched, one of the things that we found was that some of the policies only allow for one family member. I ask that you allow that employee to have some flexibility. So if they need to care for a child, they can they can care for the child. Or if they need to care for an elderly parent, they also have that ability too, all within those 6 weeks. They would not exceed those 6 weeks, I should say. And then what I'd ask is that you allow me to revise our vacation policy. And this would help mitigate some of those expenses I just mentioned a few minutes ago. Right now, our policy allows employees to cash out or sell. Cash out if they leave employment or sell while they're still working. And if they're using the paid family leave benefit, what I'd like to do is put a temporary hold on their ability to sell or cash out during that 1 year after the family medical payout or paid family benefit is being used. And while I did say I'd like to have this effective July 1st, when I created this, it was way before COVID. And so, I think, in the circumstances that are happening right now, if you would consider, making it effective sooner than that, that would be great.
All right, thank you so much for the information. Is there anything else you want to share right now?
No, my conclusion is just that when you look at paid family leave, one of the benefits of paid family leave is it really does help our employees. They are more invested, and when you're looking at being a leader in Buncombe County, this just makes sense.
All right, thank you very much.
Questions?
And we're not going to obviously put over tonight. This is sort of starting this conversation, so thank you for great information.
I just had a quick question. Thank you for the presentation. This is helpful and builds on probably about 3 years of working to this moment, so that's very exciting. I had a quick question, perhaps not for tonight. I know we're trying to move forward, but as we move forward in this discussion, if we might just have some presentation about the whatever data might exist about the essentially the benefits that an employer realizes through the employee retention and recruitment that a policy like this would enable us to do. So we can certainly look at the projected price tag on one side, but if there's any kind of projections around what we might also save in terms of the quality of candidates we could attract and retain, that would, I think, just be helpful as we think about this. But I'm personally just very excited to see this, generally speaking, but it also couldn't be more timely. I know a lot of Buncombe County employees are wrestling with exactly the same questions that everyone in our community is right now, which is how do we move forward during this time? And the more I think we can directly support our employees, but also help show what's possible in this moment, I think the better. So I personally would love for us to move forward as expedited a fashion as we reasonably can, but look forward to hearing what other people have to say.
I'm sorry, Commissioner White says, I have a quick question for clarification. First, thank you for your time in putting this together. I'm excited that we're finally taking a look at it. I'm trying to figure out where the additional costs are coming from, because we're just paying people their normal salary. Unless we're looking at the projected costs incurred coming from the fact that they're not taking unpaid leave.
So there is that, however, where the costs really are is that there's that selling piece in our vacation policy.
The selling piece.
So they could potentially, take the time and then sell out a week or two. Or if they were to leave. Yes.
Thank you, Sharon.
I'm sorry.
It's all right, I'll be glad to add to that. So you are correct in that in the current moment or for the current budget, the salaries are budgeted. However, at the time that an individual would be taking leave, so they're taking their own leave, so it is decreasing the available balance. And so it becomes a deferred liability, so that it becomes a future liability for the organization, because they would have otherwise used their leave. Instead of doing that, it sits in their accrued balance. And so when an employee does exit the organization, we do pay out their remaining annual leave, comp time, or another category is banked leave. So it becomes a deferred liability for the organization.
Thank you.
Okay. A question I have is, maybe I misunderstood something. It said that we could go up to 12 weeks, right? Why are we not giving the full 12 weeks rather than we're just giving half of that?
What I was looking at was, what are the other counties, what are our peers doing? And looking at, the average was about 6 weeks.
So the 12 weeks is FMLA, the federal rule. They still get 12 weeks. What we're saying, right now, those 12 weeks are unpaid unless they have time on the books. What we're recommending is that we pay for half of that. They still get 12 weeks they can take up, but we recommend we're going to pay for 6 weeks.
Yeah, I think that, I think it's great. I mean, where people are impacted is particularly on the lower pay scales where they need that. You're trying to make a decision whether you take care of your child or you get the money. And what I see that this does, I think 6 weeks is great. It takes that anxiety away, allows them to be a better team member and a better parent or whatever their need is. So.
That's what increases the loyalty from the employee. And when others are, when you're recruiting, when they see that we have a paid family leave policy that won't interfere with their vacation, so they can still, rest after, caring for a baby or a parent. It's important. Thank you for your time.
All right, I just one comment on it, because we're thinking about this. So these policies are independent, but they're kind of related to. So one of the things that I would speak up for, I'm very supportive of the paid family leave policy. And I'm happy to look at some of the details of that, because there is a range of different ways that could, be set up. But just so I'm clear, is the recommendation on the ability to monetize your unused vacation days? Could you clarify what the recommendation is? Is it to temporarily, just talk me through that, and just to be real upfront, I've always been in favor of getting rid of this. And because it does cost a lot of money, and to me it's like, I think creating a really, really good paid family leave policy is so much of a better policy than being able to just pay for unused vacation days, but which also has a budget price for the county. So I think kind of creating this really generous, supportive paid family policy, but looking at maybe not keeping the monetization of unused vacation days is something I'd be interested in considering as part of this discussion.
As part of this discussion, that is part of the budget personal ordinance. And we are looking at a rewrite of the personal ordinance, and that we're going through this list of things. What we were proposing tonight is if you do participate in the 6 weeks paid, you didn't turn around and sell that week vacation in that 1 year period. So it was a temporary restriction of it.
I guess I would just like to put on the table that as we look at all these different kind of personnel issues that I'm going to probably advocate for just discontinuing the whole pay for unused vacation days. Maybe that frees up some more money to look at maybe adding a little more to this, or just takes into help the kind of the I mean, it could allow us to create a great paid family leave policy with perhaps very little actual net fiscal cost to the county, but we want to look at all those numbers.
And to be clear, you did reduce, that was unlimited at one point, and last year you went to just 1 week they can sell. And so employees are using that, but not as much as it used to because it went away.
And so I would just ask that we kind of refresh all those numbers. When the interim county manager was here, George Wood, we did change the policy, and I was supportive of it. But I recall at that time when we looked at it, the difference between just reducing it or discontinuing it was actually quite significant. And so we could have saved quite a bit more money for other personnel benefits if we took that additional step. But let's just look at all the numbers again and make sure we're clear on what the cost really is.
And we will do that. When you did announce that you were going to trim back from unlimited, there was a rush, so to speak. So everybody went ahead and did it at that time. So the difference is not as much anymore, but we can pull those numbers for you and bring those back to you.
Great.
Yeah, from what I remember, doesn't need to be part of this discussion because that discussion was a pretty brisk discussion, if I remember it. But very supportive of what you're doing. Sounds great.
And we will bring that back and clarify the budget impact as a deferred impact.
Good to get the numbers.
And I would also just give a shout out to my colleague here, Jasmine, for being a really consistent voice for this. So thank you, there's always a lot going on. Resources are always finite, but thanks for continuing to just keep us looking at this, and for other commissioners who've spoken up for it. I'm glad we're focused on it. All right.
To bring that back for the actual vote, or do you want it to be later as we look at all budget, our personal ordinances, or do you want to bring this?
My thoughts would be, I think we're trying to get away from doing personnel policies in the budget itself, right? So I'm definitely, I think we should vote on it as a standalone matter. Both of these kind of issues are standalone matters we talked about. I do think that, well, I don't know, I'm open. I mean, I anticipate the next very short period of time in front of us is going to be very busy, right? So I don't want to pile on things that we could potentially take up a little bit later while we're maybe in kind of the time that we need to be most focused on this COVID-19 response. But definitely before the budget's adopted. So that's kind of my high level thoughts. Commissioner Shaw, any other thoughts on it?
So what I would say is that if it is, if you have the data, and you can bring it back to us, I'd say the sooner the better, would be my opinion, as long as you've already done the work. That's one thing that we're talking about is the 6 weeks, what you presented tonight. I think we could probably, if you've already done the work, as far as us acting on it, I wouldn't delay it. I would do it.
If you have, in the coming near term or later term, if you've got the bandwidth, bring it forward, we're ready. It sounds like we're ready to talk about it. But if you need to hold, in light of other things we might be handling, then we'll give you some discretion on that.
Sounds right.
Great, and also just so we're clear, this discussion doesn't change the fact that you as manager have taken steps now to allow county employees who are non-essential employees to work from home. If people have any health concerns, they should work from home. So we've instituted policies that are in effect right now that for all of our county employees that allows them to work from home or to not work if they can't in light of COVID-19. But that's kind of a temporary policy as we work through this situation, right? Okay. Very good. Okay. All right, the next item on our agenda is under the Medic franchise agreement, and Taylor Jones is going to give us an update on this item. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. So we have reached a unified agreement with Medic and the CEO of Medic, Kermit Tolley, and myself to actually let the franchise agreement expire at the end of the month and then start working towards a convalescent franchise for the future. And he's going to put that forward to us at a later time, working with our medical control physician.
So So that doesn't require any action tonight, I assume this is just bringing it forward and that request, and which sounds good. I appreciate you bringing it to us.
Hey, Taylor, excuse me, do we have a plan after April 1 to make up, I mean, how many calls did they run? Is there a plan to offset the?
So they were running about 200 calls a month. So when we started talking about that, what we're looking to do is bring up utilization of the fire departments more, have a higher concentration of the convalescent calls through medic, and actually do some roadside deployment, things like that here in the city, as we look at everything that's going on now, to actually kind of enhance and get that response out. And then we're going to ask the fire department's going to step up and provide some additional. But as we move forward, there may be additional requests based on what we see and how this plan works.
All right. Okay. Business, as we discussed at the beginning, we added 2 new items. Let's go ahead and take up the 2 new items first. The first is let's talk about designating deputy finance officer.
Good evening, commissioners. As we know, there are requirements under General Statute 159 as far as what we have to do with pre-audits of contracts and all those sort of things. I've been up here and I've talked to you about this before. I am the finance officer. Jennifer Barnett is our only deputy finance officer that can do the same thing I do in my absence. In light of the declaration of this emergency and the potential that both of us could be incapacitated, I thought it would be prudent to have a resolution that would be temporary during the emergency declaration to appoint a few more of my finance staff as finance officers. And those are listed out in the resolution by position. So it'd be the assistant finance officer, my business officer, the disbursements manager, my accounting and reporting manager, and my procurement manager. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have about the resolution.
Okay. All right. Is there a motion?
Second.
All right. Next up is the request to suspend certain policies during a local state of emergency, and Michael Frew will present this item.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Register of Deeds had a good idea about how to try to consolidate and pull in and make a skeleton crew in his office, and not just for the Register of Deeds office, but also to assist other line departments that are public facing, also include tax. What is different about Register of Deeds is that administratively the county manager can close public facing areas of county facilities, but the Register of Deeds hours are set by the commissioners of any given county. So in this situation, we're doing several things. For about 9 years now, there's been a policy in effect authorized by state law. The commissioners at the time approved a policy whereby before any deed is recorded with the Register of Deeds, they have to go by the tax office and get a certification that the taxes, that there are no delinquent taxes on that parcel. So the idea here is to suspend that policy for the duration of the local declaration of state of emergency, just to allow the skeleton staff to work to make less legwork for people and to promote online services and e-recording. As part of that, Mr. Reisinger has worked with our providers under e-recording, and they will waive their normal fees and annual licenses to get that going, so it'll be easy to set up and easy to do. Most deeds and land records are now recorded in that fashion, and that will continue. The only thing that must be in person are marriage licenses in this office, and this would also cover that. They need to call and make an appointment in advance, and they can come and get that done. The next item on here is daily deposits. The general statutes require that when there's cash on hand of $500 or of any amount, that they be deposited daily into a financial institution. The statute allows the commissioners to waive that up to $500. So once you accumulate $500 in any point of cash collection in county business that would be required. Several years ago, this board approved the limit of $250,000. Excuse me. The idea here is just to ask that limit be increased to $500 per cash on hand, maintain the policies adopted by finance director, and just proceed on that basis. Again, just less foot traffic down to the bank and less work with the public. In line with what we're doing, maybe the most important part for the register of deeds is that this would, this resolution would close the in-person, would close the doors of the business for in-person traffic, except for the marriages as I indicated. All others would be done through e-recording, online, and drop boxes. And Mr. Reisinger is here if there's any questions in particular, but that's the substance, just those three things for the duration of the emergency.
Very good, thank you, Mr. Frick.
So I've got a couple questions for the Register of Deeds, if you could, but they're pretty simple, I think. So what, as far as like frequently asked questions, which I think a lot of people that are downtown will just kind of pop in and ask something. So is that just available on the online, or how would you be doing just frequently asked questions?
Sure. Well, thank you all for considering this. We appreciate you all doing everything you can to make things easier to take care of staff and citizens right now. So if someone wanted to ask a question, we're now saying that you need to do that online or by telephone. We don't want your terms coming into the office, and we don't want to give you our terms.
Okay, so all this will be out on the county website, I think, for people to see that. What do you see? Is there any downside? Anything that we should be concerned about? On all of these, or slowdowns, or attorneys, not really liking it, or your thoughts on that?
So this is in line with the current policy that's happening with all of our departments right now. This is something that we didn't want to do, but I think it's incumbent upon us as leaders of Buncombe County to step up and say that we've got to start shutting things down. These are policies we started putting together a couple weeks ago, and we decided that it was important we pull the trigger on this. And I think Buncombe County needs to lead, and we need to tell folks that this virus is real, and we need folks to start staying home. And if we can do things online, we should, and that's what my office is trying to do.
Well, as long as they call, I mean, I don't. So I guess you don't really see any downside. I can't think of any. As long as people can get a hold of you and get the work done, I think it's great. Appreciate you bringing it forward.
If you have any concerns, feel free to let me know.
I don't.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Reisinger. Is there a motion on this item?
I'll move.
All right, discussion. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Next up, quarterly settlements. Mike Faroo's got another one.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. This is another item that requires no action of the board at this time. As you know, what we've been doing lately, last year or two, is to bring forward to the board on a quarterly basis settlements that have occurred either through the authority delegated to the Small Claims Committee up to $30,000, or other matters that this board is authorized to settle. We thought it'd be best to bring this one forward because two are on the list that appeared rather large. One, we disclosed in public several months ago, the $200,000 settlement with RAB Builders, and the other is the settlement of the Michelle Smiley estate lawsuit. Ms. Smiley passed away October 17, methamphetamine overdose while in custody at the jail. That was a $2 million settlement. It's become public knowledge. The county paid it says $443,777 in the document, but the county did pay its $500,000 self-insured retention, the other being outside attorney's fees. So if there's any other questions, I'd be glad to try to answer them, but there's no action required.
All right, thank you very much for the information. Okay, is the School to Justice Partnership, and we have Judge Calvin Hill here to talk to us about this item. Thank you so much for being with us, Judge.
Thank you. The year 2020 has brought a substantial change to the way we deal with 16 and 17-year-olds in our criminal justice system in North Carolina. We recently became the last state in the union to agree that 16 and 17-year-olds should not be treated as adults in the criminal justice system. These children will be treated as children and have their cases processed in the juvenile system when all other efforts fail. Our court systems, law enforcement, and schools across the state are coming to the conclusion that students are harmed even with the slightest contact with our courts. While there will inevitably be some students who will require court action, systems across North Carolina and the nation are all making efforts to reduce student involvement with courts unless absolutely necessary. In keeping with these efforts, Buncombe County, through the courts, schools, and law enforcement, has developed a school to justice partnership. This school to justice partnership is a group of community stakeholders, including school administrators, the law enforcement community, court system actors, juvenile justice personnel, and others, that develop and implement effective strategies to reduce law enforcement intervention in school-based misconduct. Oftentimes, many students' misconduct issues are addressed through exclusionary discipline practices, such as suspension, expulsion, and referrals to the criminal justice system. But research shows that these responses are harmful and counterproductive. In North Carolina, youth of color are more than 2.5 times likely to be referred to juvenile court and 1.5 times more likely to be placed in secure confinement than white youth. Black students are 26% of the overall student population, but receive about 57% of these suspensions. They are more than 4 times as likely to be suspended or expelled as their white counterparts. Students with disabilities are 13% of the overall student population, but receive just short of 24% of short-term suspensions and 22.5% of long-term suspensions. They are more than twice as likely to be suspended as students without disabilities. Boys are roughly half of the total student population, but receive about 73% of short-term suspensions and 80% of long-term suspensions. Contact with the justice system correlates with higher recidivism. Contact with the juvenile justice system increases the likelihood that youth will reoffend. A North Carolina juvenile recidivism study shows an overall juvenile recidivism rate of 42%. That rate increased to 53% when juveniles were adjudicated in our juvenile court system. Additionally, youth whose cases were closed with no formal action, no court action, had a recidivism rate of just 31.5%, substantially below the overall rate. Rates of reoffending increase with deeper involvement in our criminal justice system. For example, confinement in a juvenile facility increases the probability that youth will be rearrested as an adult. Specifically, 37.6% of youth who were confined to a detention center, or youth development center were subsequently rearrested as adults. The arrest rate dropped to about 19.2% for youth who were never confined. There is no way we can be serious about the success of our children and ignore these staggering statistical information concerning the negative effects that sending kids to court does have. This information that I just relayed to you, the statistical information, came to us in 2019 from a toolkit that was distributed by the Chief Justice of the North Carolina Supreme Court. After much collaboration, we have reached here in Buncombe County what we believe is a workable
albeit a fluid document, which I believe consummates the relationship between the stakeholders and students. I say fluid document because we have agreed to meet at least biannually to review our progress and tweak this agreement as needed. This is something we've worked on here in Buncombe County on and off for about 3 years. And we're having a signing ceremony tomorrow with all of the people that we need who we believe should sign this document. I talked to the county manager. She believed that we should bring this before the commission, although it doesn't require any action on your part. We are asking Chairman Newman to sign on to this document as a show of support from this body. And we believe that this is a great show of support for our students here in Buncombe County, and we think it will make a real difference in how our students are treated for in-school misconduct. Thank you for the time. I'll entertain any questions you got.
Great, thank you so much, Judge Hill. I was asked to sign this letter. A lot of other local officials have signed it. I'm very supportive of it, and I just thought it would be good for the whole commission to be to just hear the information, because I think it's a lot of good work is being done here, but also just to confirm that the board is supportive of this. So I think if we're going to do a motion, it would be to basically authorize the chair to sign the agreement. Any questions or discussion or motion?
I move that we authorize you to sign the agreement, the chair.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you so much, Judge Hill. Appreciate your
Chairman, the manager told me I probably should bring that document with me tonight because she didn't know whether you or her would make it to the ceremony tomorrow with everything that's going on with this opioid thing. So I do have that document just in the.
If you'd like for me to sign it, I'd be happy to go ahead and do that right now, just to make sure in case everyone doesn't arrive and say, Mr. We're going to walk over and do that now. Sure, yeah, feel free.
I can't believe you missed that. I had the same question. That's what I was thinking, the same thing, Jim. Yeah, but Calvin, thanks. We started, I know how long you've been, because I was on the school board years ago. Right, I remember. Yeah, thanks. That's a, it's, yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
All right, the next is the fiscal year 2020 audit contract and engagement letter with Clifton Larson Allen LLP. And John Moore will present that.
Good evening again. So CLA, Clifton Larson Allen, has provided the county with the engagement letter and our audit contract for the upcoming fiscal audit. The engagement letter outlines the scope of services, same as previous 2 years. This will be the third year of our contract. Contract price is $128,295. In their original proposal 3 years ago, they estimated that the cost would be about $122,000, so they weren't too far off considering the amount of work they've done for us. So I think that's an actual reasonable cost for the audit. And as soon as we get this signed, then we will start working on getting them scheduled, getting them in here, and away we go again.
Very good. All right, Commission, any questions or discussion? Or motion? All right, we have a motion and a second to approve the FY 2020 audit contract and engagement letter with Clifton Larson Allen LLP. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Thank you, sir. Next up is a resolution in support of North Carolina Department of Transportation projects slated for construction. Is Tim representing this or am I through? Not through.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, generally when the Department of Transportation is expected to do construction in the county jurisdiction, they ask that the local board approve and just give their okay, please proceed with the construction project. So this one is for construction of the acceleration lane at US 74A at exit 53A from I-40. They want to put in $1,288,000 worth of improvements for that acceleration lane. They're planning to put in a roundabout at Cane Creek Road and Mills Gap Road. That'd be a $1,901,778 project. And finally, the third project, left turn lane at NC 191 and Brevard Road. They're looking to put a right turn lane off Brevard Road onto Clayton and a right turn lane off Clayton onto Brevard Road, and also put in the traffic signals. So that's just over $500,000, $515,000. They're asking for a resolution of your support for these projects.
Can I ask one question? And maybe I've just not kept up with all these in my head, but not all DOT projects like this come to the board to get a kind of affirmation of support. So why? I guess I'm a little clear. Why are these and not other projects that seem kind of similar to these?
I can't answer that. I do know that it can be sometimes hit or miss, but I know that there's new local folks in the DOT office locally, and I think that's the standard they would like to do with all those type of projects.
Okay. Well, we might just be able to kind of look into that. I think these are fun projects, but I just, my sense certainly on the EPO, there's just dozens of projects that happen all the time that are like this that normally don't come to the board. So I'm just asking the question if we could.
We'll look into that.
Try to understand what the criteria are for why they bring some and not others, and what the plan is going forward. Yeah. Okay.
I'm particularly glad, though, that these are come tonight, so that we know. And I know that Commissioner Presley is extremely elated. Anybody that tries to take that shortcut, the left-hand turn lane from 191 onto Clayton Road, and a red light there. I mean, that is, oh, that's wonderful. And all the others are too.
All right. Is there a motion to support the resolution of support?
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Thank you, Mr. Through. Okay, authorizing the execution of a non-warranty deed for 27 Chatham Road.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, about 25 years ago, the county commissioners conveyed this property, 27 Chatham Road. It's in that knot of neighborhood between Merriman Avenue and UNCA. In that deed to the gentleman, it was a non-warranty deed at the time. He was a good taxpayer for over 25 years. He recently passed away. His sole heir is trying to sell the property now, and they found a glitch. The title insurance company noticed that there was a discrepancy in the deed that the county did to the gentleman some 25 years ago. And so to fix that problem, we'd ask the board to do a corrective deed. This is a new non-warranty deed to correct that issue.
Thank you very much. I'll make a motion to approve the resolution authorizing the execution of non-warranty deed for property located at 27 Chatham Road.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Our occupancy tax and local emergency items off the agenda. So next up is a budget amendment for the local state of emergency declaration that's already been adopted. Barnett's here to talk to us about it.
Yes, good evening, Chairman and Commissioners, again. In response to our public health needs and following last week's declaration of the local state of emergency, we are bringing forward to you a request to amend the general fund budget in preparation for expenditures specific to addressing public safety and health of our community. Our initial proposal was for $250,000 as increases to the general fund budget. I will outline for you, so as of today, necessary associated expenditures or obligations for items or services total about $130,000. These items are for such purchases for personal protective equipment, takeout containers for school meal sites, some additional contract services for emergency coordination. So those are some of the types of expenditures that we can continue to anticipate to need to purchase. The finance director and I had a conversation earlier. At a minimum, we would recommend $500,000. The plan, you can see it's generalized. So you adopt, if you'll remember that you adopt your budget at a functional level. Our initial proposal split funding at that highest level, so at the function that enables us the ability to move budget within that function to the areas of spending. Your highest areas of spending initially were anticipated to be in your public safety function and your human services function. We had further discussion with the county manager today, and I would recommend that we additionally split some of that funding to our general government function. So our general services department resides there, or IT, just so that it grants them the opportunity to go ahead and expend necessary dollars and have funding available in those functional areas. So our recommendation right now would be a minimum of $500,000 that we would split, and I can go through that recommended split, but would open that to you all for discussion and any kind of proposal for an additional or other funding amount.
So the question, do we need to put another ordinance in here for, the ordinance is 250?
Right. Our conversation has been that we can address that and get it adopted into the minutes. I'm able to provide to the clerk an amended actual ordinance that will reflect the conversation here today, and that can be what the chairman signs.
So when we vote for this, how do we need to do that?
Is say put 500,000 in your motion so that it's clear that it's what we're talking about now, not what's in the staff report.
I move that we approve for $500.
Second.
So in that, if I can make the request so that we have it actually outlined in the function, in our functional areas, do you want to do that, Avril, or? Okay. So our recommendation would be $350,000 in the public safety function, $75,000 for the human services function, and general government, $75,000, totaling $500,000. And your offset would be appropriated fund balance.
The people who made and seconded the motion support inclusion of those details. Yes.
So those specific numbers will go into the minutes as the motion.
Yes.
Very good. Any discussion?
I have a question. I'm sorry, go ahead. No, go ahead.
Oh, just in the event there are some folks tuning in, I'm not sure if there are or not out there, but if we could have maybe just a word or two, Ms. Pinder, about just the broad general types of things you think these expenditures might go to support in the days and weeks to come. Just I think we briefly just had an opportunity to visit the Emergency Operations Center this afternoon, and the caliber of work underway is tremendous, and I think many of our community members would be heartened by that and have some of their most immediate questions answered, just knowing the level of preparation that's happening and knowing that the kinds of things that funds like this will be directed towards in terms of the comprehensiveness of planning and just to acknowledge particularly our fellow commissioner who's doing double duty right now, and thank you for your leadership in both those capacities.
The type of things, as Jennifer mentioned, would be protective equipment. We need masks, we need gowns, we need cleaning equipment. So we have found a contractor that can supply those, so we're buying those in bulk. We've also partnered with our school systems, and they need some supplies as well. And since there's no state budget, in fact, we are holding that now in case we do get reimbursement. So we're looking at supplies to help deliver meals to our community. We're also talking contractors, As we mentioned before, we have not set up an EOC, so we're training, and we had to bring some trainers in the fire department to set things out. But we also brought in the EOC manager as well to help with some of that, help with that guidance. So professional services would be one thing we're looking at. The other thing that we're looking at standing up are places that we can have and house indigents if you need to do so, or quarantine folks. We need to have MOUs in place, and if we need to pay for that. So we want some funds available that we can do those kind of things.
Thank you very much.
Mine's more of a, so you said we spent $130,000 so far. I'm just gonna ask, is $500,000, I mean, it's been a week, 2 weeks that we've done, is that gonna be enough?
So the intent is we're spending up in the early stages, and if we do see that, we have a 2 week, we'll come back to our commission and amend that. But that would be the intent, is that we're doing a fast spend up right now, we don't know that we're gonna maintain that spend rate.
I would just add though, since I think, this is an unprecedented public health challenge that we're facing, a lot's at stake. I think, how we respond now is going to make a real difference in how it plays out. So if there are other needs, I think, I speak for everyone in saying, come to us and tell us what you need to mount the most effective response that we can provide to protect public health and safety, and also to just help the residents of our county. We're going to get through this, but I think the things we do will determine, how well we get through this and how quickly we get through this. So there are going to be things that we are going to need to do that we don't even know about yet, right? Because we've never faced this particular kind of challenge. So as the plan takes greater, shape, and we know what the needs are, let us know. We can reconvene this commission. We have a meeting every other week. This is our regularly scheduled meeting, but we can convene this commission as needed if there are additional resources that are needed between now and our next regularly scheduled meeting. So just let us know what we can do to put the resources into the things that need to be happening. And even if they're some of these are going to be very much outside of the kind of core governmental services that we're used to investing in, we're going to need to do things that are likely different than we've done before. So let's not be constrained by just sort of how we've always done things before in light of how unique this challenge is.
Thank you. We'll monitor the spend rate, and we'll bring that back as we think we're burning. We call it the burn rate. So as we're burning through it, we'll come back.
All right. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right. Thank you, Jennifer. Let's see. First is a budget amendment for Dogwood Trust grant funding.
Yes, and I do believe the first one that is on your agenda references two particular amounts that have been awarded as grants from the Dogwood Health Trust. The first one is in the amount of $21,600 in support of the 2020 census. These dollars will be used to purchase community center kiosks across Buncombe County in an effort to increase participation in the census. The second award is $18,300 to Recreation Services to support retrofitting and enhancing inclusive multi-generational play space at the Charles E. Owen Park in Swannanoa. So we are requesting the ability to accept those grants and then to be able to establish the budgets relative to those grants. One in the grants fund, the $21,600 for the U.S. Census, and the grants fund. Tim Love is not here this evening.
Oh, he is.
Oh, he is, sorry. Was not, so we put that in the grants fund. It enables him to cross fiscal years if he has a need to make the purchase of those kiosks in one fiscal year or the other. And then in conversation with Josh O'Connor, he is going to make every effort to expend those funds and to put all of these into play in the current fiscal year, and so we are requesting that amendment to the general fund.
All right, so do we need two motions? We want to accept the grants and then second to approve the budget amendment?
Yes, please.
All right, so a motion to accept the grants.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Is there a motion to approve the budget amendments?
So moved.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
right, finally, a budget amendment for Dogwood Trust Grant, community-based disposal.
Yes, and I am checking in. Amy Upham is here to present some intro information relative to that, and then we'll come back and wrap that up with the request for the budget amendment.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for hearing this and for having me. I don't know if the PowerPoint is up or not. I can't see it, but I will just start talking. Really happy that Buncombe County is leading on so many public health fronts right now, and one of them is going to be hopefully safe syringe disposal. So in 2019, we received a harm reduction grant. There it is. And we started our disposal efforts. So we installed 16 bathroom units at various locations. We gave syringe handling training as part of a harm reduction training to over 400 community members. And we distributed information via brochure and through bus ads all across the city and county. There were 22 buses that had ads up for 6 months. And we also purchased 6 large disposal kiosks, which we have not yet installed and is the content of today's meeting. So we did a lot of research on what other cities were doing because no city in North Carolina, as far as I can see, outside of the Cherokee Reservation, which is not a city, but has instituted community-wide disposal programs. But a lot of other cities across the country have. So New York City, Toronto's in Canada, San Francisco, San Diego, Buffalo, New York, Atlanta, Georgia. And because of all the needle litter, we thought we should engage in this as well. So community-based disposal units reduce needle litter by 95%, and this is research out of Montreal, Canada, within 200 meters, or that's 200 yards, like a football field, of that unit. I consulted personally with Erie County, New York, which has the largest number of kiosks up. They have 76 in Erie, which is Buffalo, New York. And they've been doing this for 10 or 15 years, and they did it as part of not only cleaning up needles that people who use drugs use, but also for diabetics. And this is where we got a lot of our technical assistance. But we also read research from the cities I mentioned, and a lot of them not only do community disposal units, but also street sweep teams. So it took us about a year, but we're here where we have a city-county MOU now. We're going to donate, the proposal is to donate these 6 units to the city of Asheville. The reason we're going to do this is to waive the co-insurance to install them. The city of Asheville will actually install and maintain the units, but we will replace them if needed, and we will oversee the collection of those units. So a lot of research also went into where should these units go. There's only 6 of them, and we have a lot of places in the county that need these. But this is a pilot program that we hope to expand given the success. So we got input from, most importantly, Greenworks, which is doing this on a regular basis, and the Drug Enforcement Agency, which knows where all the hot spots are. The APD liaison there, Sergeant Escobar, was the one who helped us identify some of these locations. We also worked with Asheville City Sanitation and Public Works, Greg Schuler, for some recommendations. We received a request by Piscaview community because some of their children were getting stuck with needles. And I did personally stakeholder engagement at Deaverview and Piscaview to make sure that they would be okay with these units on site. I also went around to all of the businesses over the holidays on Haywood Road, all of the restaurants, and in downtown Asheville to distribute naloxone kits and personal disposal units for their areas. And I engaged with the business owners when I went there to ask what they would think of these units being there. I will say every single business owner is in support of these units being up. Most business owners do not want it on their property. So this is why it's great that we have this collaboration with the city of Asheville to put it on city property. Lastly, we were awarded through a random conversation I had with somebody at Dogwood, a safe syringe collection grant of $24,364. It started at the very end of February, but part of this time has been trying to find a contractor, because part of the grant is to sub-award for collection. And we've identified that subcontractor as Sunrise Recovery and Wellness, as they also staff our SSP, so this will be part of syringe services for the county. The grant covers those endpoint disposal bins, which we will put up. They're 96-gallon tubs, just like they have at the transfer station. We'll have 2 of them at 40 Cox. near the loading station. They won't be public access. That's where our sub-award agency will come in to assist people in that disposal. Dogwood is committed to helping us with a sustainability plan for this collection. And lastly, of course, we've done some community engagement, but we need to do some more. So I'm working with the City of Asheville and Buncombe County community engagement teams to attend certain meetings. Unfortunately, I had some scheduled for March that COVID-19 is going to put off the docket, but we'll pick those back up as soon as we can. The Village Roundtable, the Housing Authority Association meetings, those kinds of places. We're going to continue to do harm reduction education. One of the neat things in having Sunrise do the collection is that they're also agreeing in their contract to do education around disposal. We're going to continue to print out our materials, work with the CARE team, which is the county's substance use task force, to evaluate how this is going. How are these 6 units doing? Are people using them? We're going to weigh the needles at the endpoint collection. We've already purchased the weighing mechanism for 40 cocks. And then we've just updated the website for buncombecounty.org/safer. We'll update it again once they're installed. We had hoped installation would be in April. That's what the city committed to, but again with COVID-19, all things are potentially delayed, but we're hoping to get them up as soon as possible. The next steps, like I said, continued community engagement. We do need to identify 2 other locations. I think we have one identified through the county park system, but we really need to put one up on South Tunnel Road, and it's very difficult. There's no city property near that bridge. There's no county property. I've talked to Walgreens Pharmacy, Ingalls Pharmacy. Pharmacies in a lot of these cities are where we work together with for this effort, but their corporates keep saying no. So the stores want them, corporate national says no. I've talked to the mental health agencies on Tunnel Road. If anybody has any suggestions, let me know, but I'm saving one of those units for South Tunnel Road. And then we begin contracting process, which has already started those negotiations. We have an intern from Warren Wilson also working on a needs assessment of rural Buncombe County, because none of the locations right now are identified for rural Buncombe, and we need to know what their needs are. Right now, they have switched to a virtual needs assessment. They had worked up to visit different churches to do the needs assessment, but that's not going to happen right now. So that concludes my information that I have, and open to any questions.
You mentioned the potential that a county park was the potential location. Which park?
Hominy Creek. And that's a suggestion of the county park system.
So have you received concern of, it's just so many places where needles are found. I mean, I can tell you, I know, I'm not going to mention the places of businesses, but, out in Canmore, there's just different places.
Yeah.
So I think if people have any concern at all for this, which may be coming from businesses that doesn't want it in the front of their place, they're thinking people are going to come and use in the front of their place and dispose of needles there.
Right.
So that of course is would be a concern for the community.
Sure.
And I'd like to know what conversations you're having around that.
Yep.
And I think at another time, we really need to continue to look at, what are we doing to help those, that don't want to use those needles anymore.
Sure.
And to reduce the scale of the problem, which again is it's COVID-19 on its own, right?
Yeah.
And
it is.
be compassionate as we look at all that. But if you could just speak to that, and again, how many did you say?
We have
6.
We have 6, yeah, and I'll detail where those are. Most of those are going to be.
That would be great.
Yeah, Haywood Street Congregation has agreed to have it outside of their church on the city sidewalk. 40 Cox Avenue with the health department. We're going to encourage people who use needles for any reason to use these units. Haywood Road, we couldn't actually find a place on Haywood Road, but there's an easement on State Street near Haywood Road, that's not directly in front of any business. Piscaview Apartments, and again, they had requested one specific to children getting stuck. And then Hominy Creek Park, and I believe those are ones we have identified. We're waiting on a South Tunnel location.
And, State Street, for example, what will we be doing to make sure that the residents know that there'll be one? Okay, because State Street's a unique street.
Yeah.
It's got a little bitty church that's been there forever.
Yeah.
There's just a slice of all kinds of cute little residences and people down there. And I've heard a lot of concern in that area regarding, drug use and needles and, for businesses and individuals. And so I think if we can present this properly to that neighborhood, it'd probably be okay. We'll need to address some of these things, but just your thoughts on that, and
Sure.
that's all the questions I have.
Okay. Yeah, West Asheville is definitely a particular situation. I've been to the West Asheville Business Association meeting, talked with a lot of the business owners there. We do intend to present there again, also open to presenting at the West Asheville Neighborhood Association. And I've spoken with the West Asheville Library about potentially hosting an event there just to educate the public. Like I said, when I went around to the businesses on Haywood Road, they were very open to it and wanting it there. The city of Asheville also forwards me personally all of the resident complaints in that area, and I answer them. And so people are very excited when I say that we have a unit that will be dedicated to that area.
I have a question. So you have 6.
Yeah.
Is there any chance, because you got 5 of them going in downtown Asheville, and I know that I attended a meeting in Barnesville, and their playground out there, one of the biggest things was the needles that were all over the playground in the Big Ivy community.
Yes.
So is there any chance to get more? I know I live in Swananoa, you see needles all over, is there a chance to get more?
Yeah, if this pilot is successful, which I anticipate it being, they're not very expensive, they're $2,000 each. And like I said, the city has waived the co-insurance, so it's really no extra cost to us. I've even talked with our subcontractor about the fact that the units will probably expand in the future, and they have 20 hours a week, so they'll be able to collect for more units.
So I said that was my last question.
Yep.
Most commissioners know that's usually just not true, but, so do you have data that we'll be able to share? You're talking about the success within 250 yards, is that what you said?
200, yep.
250 yards. I think, sharing the success of, what does it do to reduce harm in the neighborhood? How does it help the neighborhood? And I think the neighborhoods are going to want to know that. And I'm assuming the information's out there from these other places that have used those. And is it possible to find communities that are similar to West Asheville in these other, larger cities or whatever? And you can bring that information back to us maybe sometime.
Yeah, I will say I had a lot of fun conversations with Erie County, and Buffalo has also different suburbs and areas around the city, some like West Asheville. The Elmwood district, I used to live there, is one of them. And really by partnering with the pharmacies is where they got their best bang, because then they can sell it as universal syringe disposal, which it really should be anyway, right? So I have been reaching out very, very strongly to pharmacies, and I'm really trying to find a willing partner on that end.
Thanks.
So we need 3 motions here. The first is to accept the grant, the second is to authorize the interlocal agreement, and the third is to approve the budget amendment. So is there a motion to accept the grant?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Is there a motion to authorize the interlocal agreement? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And is there a motion to approve the budget amendment?
So moved.
All in favor, please say. Okay. It was kind of like both at the same time. I guess I thought one of them would get one of them. Yeah. All right. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Thank you so much for your great work on this project. We do look forward to hearing more about it. I think it's going to do a lot of good. I hear from people, we all do all the time about just we're not doing business in someone's yard, it's on the sidewalks and the playground. So this is great. All right. We've got a number of appointments to make. Let's just start from the top on our list as they're published. The first is the African American Heritage Commission, and we have 1 vacancy. We have 2 excellent applicants for this board. I think I'd like to just start down on Amanda's side. If you could just go through and just identify which applicant you're supporting.
Okay. Aaron Griffin Sr.
Aaron Griffin.
I'm also for Aaron Griffin.
Aaron Griffin.
All right. Great. All right, the next is the Agricultural Advisory Board. I'd like to make a motion to appoint Bruce Snelson.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? He was our only applicant. All right, next we come to the Downtown Commission. Here we have 4 applicants. Well, first, Ruth Summers is up for a reappointment. So I'd like to make a motion to reappoint Ruth Summers.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so Ruth Summers is appointed. Now we have 1 other vacancy and 3 applicants for that one position. So again, I've
Start on
Mr. Penland's side, and just identify which of the applicants you prefer, and we'll go down, and whoever gets the most nods, we'll appoint that one.
Victoria Edge.
Brian Moffett.
Brian Moffett.
Brian Moffett.
Victoria Edge.
Victoria Edge.
Okay. I believe Mr. Moffett got 4 and Ms. Edge got 3. So, do you, that sound correct to you, Lamar? Okay, great. Thank you, everyone. All right, now we come to the Land Conservation Advisory Board. And here we have 6 applicants for 3 vacancies. So here, I'd like to ask each commissioner to identify 3 members that you would like to appoint. And again, we'll add them all up, and whichever of the applicants receives the most levels of support will be our person. So let's go back over and we'll start on your side, Amanda. Who are your, we're going to go kind of slow so that we can make sure we're kind of getting this correct. Okay? Yeah.
All right. Robert Turner, April Kiesacker, and Jacob Wiseman.
Same for me. Same for
April Hesacker, Douglas Hadaway, Don Young.
Okay, I'm for Robert Turner, April Kiesacker, and Jacob Wiseman.
Robert Turner, April Hesacker, Jacob Wiseman.
Robert Turner, Douglas Hathaway, and Don Young.
Robert Turner, Douglas Hadaway, Don Young.
All right, I believe that Robert Turner, April Kiesacker, and Jacob Wiseman each received 4 or more votes. Is that consistent with your count? I've got Robert Turner at 6, April Kiesacker at, I have 5, but maybe she got more than 4, and Wiseman at 4. Is that consistent with yours? Okay. All right, so Jacob Wiseman, April Kiesacker, and Robert Turner all got majority support. Okay, Historic Resources Commission. I'll make a motion to appoint Emily Kite.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And for Health and Human Services Board, I'll make a motion for Martha Sailors.
Second.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, thank you all. So thank you to all the applicants for these, for applying for these boards and commissions.
That I gave you for the JCPC, we don't have to do that now, but you asked for us to mention that this meeting.
Juvenile, state landing and
prevention council.
Correct. The commissioner.
So we had suggested to Commissioner Penland that he take that.
Chairman, I told you I'd email you, and I'm sorry, but I've been a little busy, but I'll do that. I'll take that.
I'll make a motion to appoint Anthony Penland.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you for being willing to do that, and Jasmine, thank you for serving.
Yeah, it's a great commission. Thank you, Commissioner Penland, for serving.
All right. The time limit for individual comment is 3 minutes. If your time expires, you can leave any questions along with your name, address, and phone number with the county manager. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak to your public comment? Mr. Rice.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I see I'm the only one in the whole crowd today that's a private citizen out there, the rest of it's staff. That's amazing, isn't it? Anyway, Judge Hill brought up some very good, interesting news this last 3 years he's been working on and school system and all this. But let me tell you an interesting fact, and I'm not talking about fiction or fake news. What he's presenting is not old news to me. It's new news, or I mean it's old news, it's not new news. Things that are going on with what the judge is talking about, he can tell you a personal story between me and him that I brought a case to him when he was a lawyer 15 years ago. And he was appointed to represent the child. But he didn't have the credentials to even represent the child. But he's a criminal attorney. And it wasn't a criminal case. And he said so. But he said, I'll do my best to let the judge know, and he did. And the kid was put on probation and sent back to school. But the point is, I'm making here is, this is not Judge Hill's. This is not any judge up here that I'm talking about in a personal way. It's that they don't know what the school law is. When you talk about special education, you're talking about Public Law 94-142, a federal law that started in 1975. And this law is very clear on what the school is supposed to do. And I've got 32 years of experience in this, and I'll debate anybody, school board lawyers, the judges, or any of them on this issue. And the reason I say that is because most attorneys won't even touch this, because they don't know. And they don't make no money off of it. But there's one thing that they do make money off of. They make money off of the taxpayers. If we're going to clean up the system, the school board, both the city and the county, need to get their act together. Number one, we got teachers coming out of college, and we got the Buncombe County full of them, and nothing personal about them in a personal way. It's a business. They do not know how to handle kids, period. They know how to read a book, and that's it. They know how to teach, they know how to do that. They don't know about kids. Special education kids is a different subject. A lot of these kids that are going out are special needs kids. He gave some good facts, but the problem with the facts that he gives is not really altogether the facts. The fact is, there are more of these kids all over than any that he is numbering. There are much more in the system. These kids are not getting the benefit of their right in the due process. And I'll explain some later. I'd like to talk to the county manager about this and update her on some things too. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your report. Anyone else? All right, we have a closed session. Before I do that, actually, let me read the announcements. Our next regular scheduled meeting is April 7th at 3 p.m. There'll be our pre-meeting at 200 College Street, room 326. That same day, April 7th at 5 p.m., the County Commissioners will hold our next regularly scheduled meeting at 200 College Street, room 326. We do have a need for a closed session, I believe. Is that the case? Okay. Mr. Fruit, can you talk to us about
Yes, sir. One item, Mr. Love was able to scare up a little bit of information from DOT.
Okay.
There's 5 types of projects that fall into the criteria that require local government support. So those with public access funds, small construction, statewide contingency, economic development, and high-impact, low-cost projects. These 3 projects fall into the high-impact, low-cost, which is relative. They were over $250,000. And they're open to, if you need a more consistent process, they're open to that discussion.
That's a great answer. Thank you so much for getting that.
But we do have need a motion to go into closed session to discuss 2 economic development matters pursuant to 143-318 of 11A4. to discuss matters related to the location or expansion of industries or other business in the area. We just anticipate direction from the board.
All right, Mr. Belcher's made a motion. Second by Mr. Whitesides. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? And we don't expect to take any action. When we come back out from closed session, we'll simply adjourn the meeting.